Okay, so hi everyone, welcome and thank you so much for being here with us tonight. We really appreciate you spending your time with us. And just to start off by introducing myself, so my name is Rebecca Kim and I'm one of your School for Seasonal Living co-founders. And our other co-founder, Belinda Liu, she couldn't make it tonight, but and our final co-founder is also our main speaker for this evening, Dr. Paul C. Wang, who some of you may know him as Sifu Paul. So in our masterclass today, we're going to present our system of practical spirituality. And then afterwards, we're going to have a Q&A session. And as a special treat, we're actually going to share a practice with you from our program together. We're going to practice it together at the end. So we hope you'll stick around for that. So I'll continue by asking Sifu Paul some questions this evening. So Sifu Paul, are you ready for this exciting event?
Yes, I'm ready. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you.
Perfect. Okay, so because the topic today is practical spirituality for personal healing and transformation, the first question I want to ask you, Sifu Paul, is what is practical spirituality? Or in other words, spiritual technology? And what is it in the way that we understand it at School for Seasonal Living?
Yes, thank you. First of all, I want to thank you and everyone here. Our time is always precious, so I hope to make it valuable for everyone who's joined here live and anyone who's watching the recording as well. Truly, deepest gratitude. So that's a long title, right? A lot of words. So as a mere mortal, I've been blessed. I don't know why and how. It's a kind of a mystery to meet many venerable teachers, and if I have any credit, I would say I'm pretty diligent in trying to absorb and cultivate and integrate everything. Nowadays, there's so much information, and sometimes it's overwhelming. We don't know how to filter, and then even AI is adding to the mix, right? So it's really confusing. And regarding spirituality, it seems perhaps abstract or esoteric, hence the qualification practical. The root word, which is practice. And practice is about repetition, and ideally conscious, intentional, high quality and high quantity. Unless maybe you've done it in previous lives. I've never really met anyone in this life where the first time you tell them and they got it, right? Whether you're learning an instrument or any other skill, it takes time and repetition. And so spirituality, I want to say the spiritual state, perhaps we can call it, is, in my experience, the most natural. Okay? So if, therefore, spiritual seems confusing or abstract to most people in this culture, then to me, this culture is unnatural. And in a way, we take it for granted. This is how things are. But in my opinion, a lot of us are injured or affected by the culture, and that can start with our own family, let alone we start to go to school, etc. And so spirituality seems something distant from us. So that's the first thing I want to say. Spiritual equals natural. And I deliberately use the word natural too, because the root word of natural is nature. And that's Mother Nature as well as our own nature, right? So the closest part to Mother Nature is our own bodies. And so people are disembodied, right? Sometimes you hear the word embody as an ideal, which is great. I'm already throwing out a lot of words. And then ultimately the key thing is the how to. So I'll go a little bit into that structure, break it down a bit. So maybe you identify with spiritual or not. When I was traveling to teach, I've taught in 20 different countries. I just leave it at that and encountered many different cultures, let's say. And from sort of hardcore atheists, right, to medical doctors, to politicians, to people in the countryside of the highlands of Haiti when I went to medical mission. So just exposed to just the panorama of the myriad that is humanity, and so grateful and blessed by that diversity. And therefore, in my sort of process, being able to distill the essence of what we have in common, and that's kind of what I like to present. And so you may argue about 80% forms and names. However, in my experience, usually at least 20% everyone agrees on. And I focus on that 20%. So for instance, even the most hardcore materialist scientists would agree that we have a mental aspect, right? You can say the mind, and that's sort of full of thoughts, right? Our thoughts move in that space. And then the emotional space, we have feelings and sentiments, right? And then you have the physical sort of layer. It's kind of like the metaphor of water, right? Solid is the physical, liquid is the emotional, and the vapor is the sort of mind. And as a practitioner of Chinese medicine, I see, again, thousands of patients over the last 20 years in practice, struggling more or less in one of these phases, if you will. Some, their mental system is more off. For instance, brain fog, or memory loss, or inability to focus, right? Overthinking. So these are kind of the suboptimal states. And emotionally, some people are sort of, that's their weak link in the chain. And so they are very prone to anxiety or depression, kind of the highs and lows, right? Those waves, and without an anchor. And then physically, right? There's a whole range, right? From tension and pain, right? In specific areas, migraines, back pain, or digestive issues, or immune issues, or insomnia, right? So it sounds like a lot, and it seems very complicated. But from that kind of distilled essence, to me, it boils down to a few factors. Right? And basically, it's we call it stress, which is too much input of stimulus, and we feel overwhelmed to our mental, emotional, physical capacities. And then our system does this very beautiful thing. It sends out alarm signals as symptoms, right? And it could be pain. And a lot of people demonize and suppress pain, but actually, pain is actually not trying to hurt us. It's trying to help us. And so, to me, those symptoms are signals that we need to do something, ideally, right? We cannot continue on this way, which ultimately leads sooner or later to burnout, right? I'm here in Berkeley. I know 19-year-old kids, to me, kids, because I'm more than twice their age, right? Who almost triple, who are sort of nearing that burnout stage, right? They have the whole list of 10 symptoms, and again, unknowingly injured by the culture. Right? They're swimming in polluted waters, but because you grew up in those waters, you think it's normal, right? Kind of by metaphor. So, to me, those are signs that we need to adjust something, right? Move from dysfunction to function, imbalance to balance, and so there are practices, therefore, that I've tested out on many people around the world to adjust the mental, adjust the emotional, adjust the physical state. Right? So from mental confusion to clarity, just really quickly, right? Emotional chaos to balance, right? And so physical freezing to flow, okay? Just some words, right? For you to understand there's these two, the yin and yang. And most people I see in the former state, and I try to guide them. And so I've codified sort of a system of 16 practices that allow us to adjust each of those states. And these are culled from, I call them the triple M, martial, medical, and mystical lineages that I've been honored to see from. And just real quickly, the martial is about body language, posture, boundaries, right? Your energy, right? The sort of vibe you're putting out there, right? A lot of people are too porous. A lot of people talk about that now. They don't know how to say no. Right? So that's kind of like that, your warrior self, right? And if you do that well, then you can maintain your balance. If you don't do it well, you lose your balance. So you need the second M, which is the medical self-healing. Right? Okay, I lost my balance. How do I bring myself back to balance? Again, mentally, emotionally, physically. And then thirdly, the mystical path is what the heck is this self that we're protecting, this self that we're healing, right? So you get to the deeper layers of identity. Who am I, right? Which is, in a way, the essence of most spiritual paths, is understanding the who, not just the what, why, and how. And those are, to me, secondary. And so I'll just say one more thing about this, and I'll hand it back to Rebecca to see where we want to go, is that's just step one, to adjust these three parts. The second step is to align them, right? Sometimes I use a sports metaphor or a symphony metaphor, right? You have a first chair violin, right? Mentally sharp, right? Intellectually high IQ. And you have a cellist who is also the first chair, right? So high EQ, let's say, right? Emotionally sort of well-developed. And then I call it PQ, right? These are sort of quotients: IQ, intellect; EQ, intuition; PQ, instinct. And so maybe the flutist, right, is also at a very high level, but they're not playing the same song, right? They're just doing their own melody, right? So you need a second sort of dimension, which is I call align. Adjust, step one. Step two, align. Sports metaphor, right? You have three superstars. Or a movie metaphor, you have three celebrities. Does that mean they're going to win the championship? Does that mean they're going to win the Oscars, right? You need to coordinate. So back to the symphony metaphor, you need a good conductor, right? And so when the mental, emotional, and physical are dissociated, for instance, physically you're eating breakfast, right? But mentally you're reviewing your interview that you have to do tomorrow, right? Emotionally you're pissed off about something that happened yesterday, right? To me, it's impossible to be spiritual in that state of fragmentation. So the spiritual sense, let's say, arises on that second step. When you start to overlap those circles, let's say, of mental, emotional, physical, then, right, it's like tuning the radio. I mean, back in the day, we had the dial, and you start to hear a signal, right, a song, right, and so the spiritual sort of experience is proportional to how well each of these are individually adjusted and collectively aligned. Yeah, and it doesn't require any props. It doesn't. You don't have to practice at a certain time of day. You don't need to wear a special kind of outfit, have the incense. You can snap into that state. Let's say, right, in the middle of a stinky, crowded subway station. Right. So that's the first kind of mapping I want to lay out. Right. Adjust and align. Adjust the parts, align the whole, and then that spirituality emerges. And then the practical part is how well can you then attune to that state and apply it in not just that once a year retreat for 7 days, right, or that weekend getaway. Maybe as you practice, it becomes with every day, for 15 minutes you can tap into that state. Later on, right, maybe it's once an hour. Later on, it's once a minute. Later on, it's every breath. Later on, it's every heartbeat. Later on, it's every brainwave pulse. You see? So that's kind of the cultivation path. So
I love that, Sifu. So just to summarize, as I understood it, it's so spiritual practical spirituality is about being natural, but it's like we've lost touch with what's being natural. So we need to learn the how-tos to return to being natural, right? And what I loved within what you said is like, with these practices that we teach, we can be returned to that state, which can also be seen as being, right? Like spiritual is like staying in that being state, right? And we don't need any tools. Yeah. Like, for example, like I myself use these tools. We have really good ones like oracle cards. Some people are into crystals, and even you use acupuncture needles, right? And that's a tool, and they're really amazing. But it's like there are moments when we can't rely on them or we don't have access to them, right? So how can we be well in those moments? And these practices allow us to be well, return to wellness, and to heal as well. So that's what I really love. And also you mentioned like these days 19-year-old kids burning out. So actually that was me like several years ago. And that's a whole nother story for some other time. But the reason we have created this program and are having this class today is because these practices transform my life and life quality and help me heal so much that I'm like so excited to share with everyone else. So I can totally relate to that. And the best part is, like you mentioned, these practices, it's not just like, of course you can start with like once a day, like just 5 to 10 minutes, but then eventually the more you practice, it becomes every moment of your life, right? So you can do the practices anywhere, anytime. So thank you for that. So then, actually, yeah, the practices being sitting, standing, walking, sleeping practices, leading to coordination and a state of being all the time. For some people, it might be the first time that they've heard of this. So can you tell us more about this? Like, what does that look like? Does that mean we can apply it to any activity that we do, these practices?
Yeah. And so sometimes I call it formal practice, and I usually recommend a dosage of 14.4 minutes a day. It's kind of a random number, but it's not. It's 24 hours times 60 is 1,440 minutes. 1% of self-investment, right, in your self-mastery or self-care has, I won't do the whole math, but has a big return on investment, just 1% of your day. And so that's sort of taking time out, scheduling it in, right? Like to check in with yourself, right? Like you check in with your best friend, right? You text them or call them. Why don't we do that for ourselves, right? Or we hope to one day meet the master, or sometimes I say, or the person you admire, like Dalai Lama or Lady Gaga. Why can't you turn and treat yourself that way and see if you can connect to that part of you, which is as badass? And so the formal practice, right, should, that 1%, right, should eventually, ideally, bleed into the other 99%. Otherwise, to me, it's just kind of a form of escapism, which is good. It's a little timeout, and then you jump back into the chaos, right? And it's kind of like, the monk goes to the Himalayas and just, communes with God in the cave for the rest of their life. That's cool. But for most of us, can we bring that mountain of silence, and that cave of sacredness within us? And can we live from, like you said, that point of being? Sometimes I use a wheel metaphor, right? That center of the wheel, if it's spinning, right? Most of our lives are at the rim of the wheel where it's spinning out of control and where the rubber meets the road and you smell that burning smell called burnout. And so the 16 practices are like spokes to move from centrifugal to centripetal, right? From kind of outward facing to inward facing. And a lot of times people don't turn inwards until there's a crisis, divorce, bankruptcy, illness, or something like that, right? You don't have to wait until those situations, but unfortunately, a lot of people do, and they have that turning point. And why not do that prophylactically, preventatively, right? Not like, say, Western medicine is really good at emergency treatment. We can do that, treat spiritual emergency. However, Chinese medicine and most sort of natural traditional medicines are about maintaining health, right? And including spiritual health or spiritual hygiene, as I like to say, right? You brush your teeth, you wipe your butt, you take a shower, you feel great afterwards, right? But some people are really stinking inside in terms of their mental, emotional state. And so the practices are not just sort of eyes closed, sitting on the floor, right? That's great. Why? Because sitting too long in an unhealthy way is same risk factor as being, say, 20, 30 pounds obese and smoking a pack of cigarettes a day. This is from epidemiology, right? So can we sit well, right? Sit in such a way that we're not harming ourselves, right? So can we apply these principles, right? That being state while we are doing, right? So thinking, feeling, doing, mental, emotional, physical, and then aligning them so we can sense that kind of spiritual axis of being, sensing into being. And instead of jumping around, right, at the rim of the wheel, can we sit at the center and turn in different directions, if that makes sense, right? I do a lot. I do more than 16 things, yeah. However, I feel like, and this is not bragging, it's just a gratitude, actually, that I feel like they're all just different expressions of that same center of being. And it's not just me. So through these practices, and maybe you don't like all 16, because 4 of them are sitting, and maybe that fits your lifestyle, right? Or you sit a lot, so you really want to optimize how you sit, right? 4 of them are standing, right? Maybe you have to be on your feet a lot, right? You're a security guard or something like that, right? So you learn to practice during your night shift. So it doesn't have to be separate, you see that? And then there's also sleeping practices. This is probably between sleeping and sitting practices. These are probably most sort of relevant for modern people. Because a lot of people, I used to say 50%. Now I say 60, 70, 80% of people have insomnia, sleep issues, right? And we can, again, consider these as skills. You can become more skillful at sleeping, right? And the fourth sort of quadrant, right? So there's 4 each, right? I said sitting, sleeping, standing, and then I call it striding. right? Maybe you have to walk a lot. I don't know. Maybe you're a park ranger or something like that. Actually, they drive a lot, but you can apply it to driving too, by the way. But these are sort of the four, and these are traditional. Actually, this is from internal alchemy practices that are couple millennia old. They break it down into these four postures, right? As a human, you can't really avoid at least sometime running through this cycle. And there's a whole cosmology to it. They actually correlate to the four seasons. So there's a beautiful sort of constellation of meaning that you tap into. It's sort of you pull on one thing and it's connected to a whole. And that actually inoculates us against the existential ennui of modern life, which is like, oh my God, right? A lot of, again, younger people are living without kind of a picture of the whole. They're kind of lost and disconnected. So when we kind of go through the course or the classes, we have them actually pre-recorded. We hired a professional team and to do so in Mount Shasta. So it's very beautiful. It's kind of like watching little mini series. And so those are kind of available. And then what we do then kind of ongoing, we plan to meet at least I think every 2 weeks to really digest and go deeper and unpack and Q&A and troubleshoot. How do we apply this in your particular situation? So that's kind of the format.
I love that. And one thing that really stood out to me earlier, you talked about like our spiritual quotient and training on that level, because I've taken a lot of courses and programs, but not every one of them, most of them don't go to that level, which is, like you said, the spiritual level or the spiritual quotient level is about after you've aligned your mental, emotional, physical, it's actually coordinating all of that. I'm sorry. So after you've adjusted mental, emotional, physical, then aligning all of that and coordinating all that. So that's something that our program does teach. And I also like that with a mature cultivation system like this, you can practice like even in a noisy outside environment, you can actually meditate, like even when you're having a conversation with somebody, or like when somebody is triggering you and normally you'd like freeze up or feel terrible, right? Or just like go into your shell. You can actually apply these practices like the standing ones, and even the one we're gonna do together today in those situations. So I think that's like one of the unique things about our program. And to me, it's like learning these practices and having embodied them for like 6 years now. It's like the feeling of, like I also do yoga and qigong in certain instances, and it's like taking yoga with you or like visiting your inner church or temple at any time in your life when you're not feeling well and you need to resacralize, refill the wow, this is why I'm alive feeling. So, and personally, when it's like through the practices, it's similar to like upgrading your inner operating system, which Sifu also uses that terminology sometimes. And when we rewire our operating system, we tend to experience more like synchronicity and serendipity, which just means like being at the right place at the right time, having better opportunities come in, and also like meeting more supportive friends and community. So not to mention like another like tech word, we have more bandwidth or just energy in general to like do all the things that we love without burning out, without feeling too much heartbreak that just like, really like makes us feel broken. So I love that this is a mature system that's very holistic. And one more thing too, because we wrote this in our presentation page, like sometimes learning different spiritual technologies is not always safe. So what I mean is like there are certain practices out there, and they're like very specifically training one thing, which then can lead to like imbalance, right? So what I love about our program too is that it's holistic. So you'll never run the risk of training in imbalanced ways, because like some spiritual trainings and technologies can be really dangerous. I think Sifu, you have patients that come to you, right, that have issues after they've been training poorly or in imbalanced ways, right? So could you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, that is an issue. So the idea of mature meaning thousands of years old, right? So there's a modern kind of culture of biohacking and then learning techniques and kind of mishmashing things together, which is great, right? Because a lot of these, let's say, traditions that actually were more holistic, that tied everything together, like I tried to insinuate about everything having a constellation of meaning. So I'll give one example. Is like, oh, you hear that ginkgo biloba is good because the research says that it improves blood circulation to the brain. So then you pop, ginkgo biloba. And so that's kind of a very modern approach, right? Or you hear, cold exposure is good, so you just do cold plunge or whatever. I mean, it's fine. But what I think is lacking is actually customization and kind of part of a system which can counterbalance, right? Not cold plunge is not good for everyone, right? Sauna is not good for everyone, right? Ginkgo biloba is not good for everyone. And so if you lack a framework, a holistic system, then at best, maybe the benefits are limited. At worst, you hurt yourself. And like you said, I've had to help people who hurt themselves, whether it's qigong or CrossFit or taking an herb for too long, right? In a way that's kind of creating more bias in their system rather than balance. And so when I kind of and it's hard to kind of explain everything all at once, but I'll give an example again with the ginkgo thing, right? In the traditional Chinese herbal medicine framework, just as an example, is very rarely do you use one herb. You use maybe at least 4 herbs or 8 herbs that actually balance together, right? And so again, if we think about this framework of 16 practices, right? Maybe some people should do these 2, right? Or they should focus on these 3. And maybe it changes in the next month, right? And so something that is customizable and systematic and ties together is actually really important.
Yeah, and I've personally benefited so much from the systematic way of practicing. Just as a quick example, doing these practices over a few years has allowed me to release my chronic anxiety that I've had since I was a child. And that was so debilitating before because I used to get drained really easily and have to spend more time recovering from like social activity than actually being and enjoying it. And also like now, thanks to, more of an alignment within myself, like I have no trouble like attracting the most amazing like guides, teachers, supportive community. Actually, for example, even just this program, School for Seasonal Living, I literally during my practice meditation, I downloaded from Source Energy, if you will, that I was supposed to go to Mount Shasta to meet Belinda, our co-founder, who I didn't know yet, and that I was supposed to live there and make this happen, and it all just kind of unfolded. So that's like one of the grander things that I've seen both for myself and other students that have been training with us, that these kinds of serendipitous, synchronicitous events increase. First of all, you notice it like more like maybe once a month, once a week, and then it happens on a daily basis. And then at some point when you train more, like if you get to seafood level, for example, like you cause them at will, you make them happen. So, and we teach the keys of how that happens in the program. So, I know you talked about the different ways of practicing: sitting, standing, sleeping, and striding or walking. But I think even before getting into those specific, more advanced techniques, there's something that we all need to learn before that, right, Sifu? There's a key practice that we have to learn. So could you tell us about what that is and also guide us in it?
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, let's move into that. So, by the way, thank you all for keeping up. I know sometimes it's hard to receive, so appreciate your presence. So the wheel metaphor, right? I already kind of presented that, and what I want to start to lead us into, and first describing it, is seeing if we can anchor ourselves. You can imagine sort of an anchor on the bottom of the ocean where it's more still versus kind of drowning in the tsunami above, right? So that's kind of an image of deepening and going inwards, right? And if you kind of wrap that around as a circle, then it's like one of those spokes can be, right, the anchor. And again, we have these 16 ways, right? Whatever you like. It's like a buffet. You don't have to eat everything. Just take the crab legs or whatever. Yeah. So centering is the name of, in a way you can say it's the core practice. And the other the other ones are just variations of that. Yeah. But as you know, it's really important to have a kind of a different angles on a thing, right? Whether it's whatever it is, it helps you to kind of triangulate and more fully understand and experience that sort of ideal. And so everyone's heard of centering, and or some people use the word like grounding or things like that. And that's a great philosophy. And sometimes it's hard to actually translate that philosophy into your psychology and into your physiology. And so it's just like, you have the book, but it's just on the shelf. You don't know how to bring the wisdom in the book into your body. And without that, it's not sustainable or really that effective if it doesn't get to that depth. And so for the way I like to transmit, and perhaps it's because of my martial practice, someone is trying to simulate killing you, right, or attacking you. Centering. Oh, how do I center? Right? And it's also been my journey. When I was younger, I we talk about fight, flight, freeze. I was an expert as a young boy at freeze. I would just go silent, but not kind of a sacred silence, just a frozen silence. And so I've been really grateful again to my teachers to be able to test these teachings out. And later on, when I was traveling like crazy, 300 days of the year, right, and teaching 4-day workshops, 40 weekends of the year. If I didn't have these practices to stay centered, I probably would have had a heart attack and a stroke and something, burst some pipes. And so as we start to move into the practice phase, I think it's a good time, is just, you can imagine, right, that not even imagine, this is actually literally true in your physicality. You have a center of mass, right? Whatever it is, if it's your phone or something like that, right? If you hold it on one end, it doesn't balance, right? But literally at some point, right? Not there, not there, not there. Oh, right there, about where the apple is. Okay, no sponsorship here, right? There's actually a balance point. Oh, wow, that's the center. Wow, so mystical, right? And again, that's like a spiritual concept, but it's also very natural. And so you have that in your body, right? And so let's define that. That's around your navel, right? And here's a formula I want to throw out: is everyone has done breathing, everyone has done some form probably of movement or yoga or qigong nowadays, right? After these practices have been sort of immigrated to the United States for half a century now. I would say efficacy or potency is proportional to how much meaning. I call them memes, right? Like center, the word center is a meme. A meme is a unit of information that is transmitted culturally, just like a gene is a unit of information transmitted biologically or genetically, right? So the maximum memes per movement of the moment, right? So when you do, say, Tai Chi, you're not just like, okay, I can just do the external movement, but it's not that potent, right? But if you can add your breath to it, if you can add your intention to it, right, etc. If you can add the idea of meridians, right, that's 4, right? So you're not just waving your arms physically. Hope that makes sense, right? And so just the difference between a novice and a sort of disciple and a master, I would say, maybe a novice is just working with 2 memes per frame of the moment, right? So they're doing the same form. Intermediate person is paying attention and integrating, let's say 5, 10, right? And a master is maybe integrating and simultaneously enriching, right, the practice with 100 things, right? Maybe you've seen a master just in the way they walk, right, or just in the way they speak, or just in the way they drink tea. It's like, whoa, something about this, right? I don't want to mess with them, maybe, or I want to learn from them, right? There's something about how they be and do from being. I call that do being, right? That is emanating, right? And nowadays the word like somatic, or embodiment is very popular. So in this moment, yeah, the first meme is, and you can use your hands to help too. That's another thing, right? Is using our more external to feel inside is you can place your hands around your navel area. It doesn't have to be a specific point here. Yeah. And if you want, you can even put one hand behind, right, in your lower back. Maybe the back of your hand at your lower back. And let's try that again. Before you do that, add intention to your hand. Right? So you're not just like plop. I want you to put into your hand care. I want you to put into your hand like reverence. I want you to put into your hand like how you would, touch, a sacred, the oldest tree, like wow, I want you to put some wow in your hand, right? Because we talked about operating systems, we talked about, this kind of idea of algorithm and things. So just a little digression is that, when the iPhone 1 came out, wow, iPhone 1, right? And then people started to wait outside of the Apple store overnight to get the iPhone 3. And at that point, iPhone 1 was junk, right? And now we're here at iPhone 15, right? Everyone is so impressed by this piece of hardware. The human body, hardware, software, is like iPhone 10 million. But most people just don't know how to kind of tease out the functionality. Okay, so that's a metaphor. And so first step, right? Enter your center. So you're using your hands with, let's say, wow hands to touch this body, right? And to set the center. And then, right, so that's already kind of two things. And then we stack on top of that your breath. So as you inhale, try to reinforce, in a way, the spokes of the wheel, right? Moving towards that center. So as you inhale, you enter that center. Eyes open or eyes closed, up to you. Okay, so that's our first sort of planting of the seed. Before we go deeper, I want us to do the opposite. I want you to go out and sense all around you. There's a universe out there, right? So see if you can, like the center of a sphere that's expanding. Up, down, left, right, front, back, 360 degrees. Expanding maybe 10 feet in all directions, like a radius of a sphere, radii of a sphere in all directions. And that goes from 10 feet to 20 feet to 100 feet, up to you, whatever is comfortable. See how far you can expand. Sometimes if you want to add one more layer, one more meaning, is try using the exhale. As you exhale, see if you can move out more into the subtlety, towards the mystery out there. Okay, so now we feel the sphere around us. And so keep some of that cooking, right? It's like we're doing alchemical cooking here. So keep that sense of the ball around you. And now come back. So to the center of that ball and place yourself at the center of that ball. Place that point that you're sort of nesting behind the navel, let's say. So this is creating a alchemical architecture. No matter where I am, I can sense this symmetrical sphere. I could be in an airplane. I could be sitting down, standing up, right? This is the core practice, right? I could be jogging. I could be eating, having sex, right? Driving. You have a sense of this symmetrical sphere all around you. In a way, the center of the universe. Where is it? It's inside you. So the universal is the personal. So see if you can sense it simultaneously, right? This universal sphere, symmetrical, regardless of where you are in space-time. And let's start to turn the dial. So we're refocusing back on that source center within. So again, inhale, enter the center. Now I'm going to use the exhale to guide you, go deeper into that point. So let's focus on this phase. Inhale, enter the center. It's an embodied center. It's not a center out there somewhere. It's in here. Inhale, it's like feeding it, and when you exhale, go deeper into it. Enter the center. You can think of planting a seed of being. When you exhale, don't let the intention go out. Let it water that seed. Do that a few more times. Inhale, enter your center. That's like planting the seed at being. And then exhale, it's like watering that seed. Let's do that 2 more times. Keep it simple. Inhale, come in, enter your center. And then plant the seed at the peak of the inhale. And then when you exhale, start to water it. So 2 more times. From the myriad out there, all those radii, you come to the one, the center, the hub. Inhale brings you there. Plant the seed. Exhale, start to water it. Go deeper into that seed potential, not yet actualized. One last time. Inhale. Make every repetition new. Feel that seed of being. And exhale, long exhale, really hydrate that seed. Maybe at the end of the exhale, notice it start to move, start to germinate. Okay, now let your breath go and just hold your intention at this point for a moment. So this is a superimposition of your personal center with the universal center. People use these words all the time: universe, source, center. This is just one example, a very simple one, how we can begin the process. Okay, not something else very important. It guides you in a sort of a closing, but it's also a bridging. So this is kind of a formal practice, right? 3 breaths. First breath, you inhale, and like you're on your computer, you press save as, okay? 100%, really feel into that center. Don't forget it. It's like you're about to leave your friend. You want to remember this moment. And you exhale and come out slowly, 20% outwards. So don't just jump out of the practice. Slowly wake up, if you will. Try to remember this dream of being. Second inhale. Right? You feel that 80%, and then you exhale, come out to a 50-50 state, like you're waking up from a dream of being. Don't forget this state. You're in 50-50, half eyes open, or eyes half open, ears half open. And finally, the third bridging, inhale. Right? You feel that 50%, and then exhale, lock it at 20%, please. And come out 80%. So this is the challenge. Can you maintain that 20% of being, even as you engage in 80% of doing? Most people are 100% outward. I would say 120% overextending for years and decades. That's not sustainable, right? So there's already a couple of things that you can play with, even if I never see you again, that hopefully you find valuable. And this idea of cultivation is really important, right? It's not just one time. One time can give you a taste, right? But if you really want to extract all the nutrition and let it sink into the being level, it does take repetition. And I shall say, in my experience, it's much more conducive in the process to have a community, even if it's just one person, to remind you of the memes, so to speak. I'll hand it back to you, Rebecca.
Yes, thank you so much for that. I just love this practice so much because it's actually quite deceptively simple compared to all our fancy practices like the sitting, walking, sleeping practices. But actually, after training this for many years, it's the ultimate practice because it's the beginning, it's the mother of all the other practices, if you will. And you can really like take it with you and use it anytime, like to return to that feeling of wellness. And if you really master centering, and as you've just experienced, the center is actually a place within our body. If you really master this, you'll never run the risk of burning out. In fact, you only continue to cultivate your energy in a more sustainable way, which translates into having more energy available to fulfill your purpose or your mission or your destiny, whichever one of those words you like. So this practice alone, centering, my favorite, has changed my life so much, again, because it helped me to not burn out from anxiety and I've been there. So and also for me, it actually sharpens my intuition when I come back to centering. It sharpens my intuition, likely because like our intuition gets blocked when we're in stressed fight or flight state, right? So if I come back into rest and digest state, this practice helps me to like turn on my intuition and my mystical downloads, if you will. So thank you so much for
Yeah,
that.
if I may just say that maybe we got a taste of it. Like again, this idea of like a initiate to a master, right? Is in the beginning it may take you 5 minutes or 15 sort of cycles for you to get back to center, right?
Mhm.
And as you
Yeah,
practice more, maybe it take 5 cycles, right? And if you practice more within one breath, let's say, right?
yeah.
Because again, that breath is not just a breath; it's stacked with 5, 10, 15, 20 other sort of colors or frequencies, right? And so then within one breath, you're able to dose yourself back to center, if you will. Uh, and then further along, right, like you said regarding burnout, right? To me, the formula for burnout is from burn to turn, from out to in. Burn out, turn in. What if you are always at least 20% turned in? You see that? So that kind of inoculates you against burnout. And so rather than having to call yourself back to center, you are centering at all times. You are being from that centering state.
I love that. And also, I love what you said about the different memes that we're training. So the different layers of training. We're in the formal program. You're not just that one center, but we're also working with the breath, the meridians in the body. We're working with our intention as well as training our attention too. So there are very specific practices using all of these. And the more you practice, you actually layer all of them, and then that becomes really like mastery level. That's
Yeah,
the
and
Mhm.
one just step of extension just to see where it goes is that's the primal center. What we worked with, sometimes I call it the source center or the prenatal center. There are other centers in our body and also other people, right? Other people have centers too. So then it's actually a relational process centering too. It's not just one center. It's a constellation of centers that you can coordinate. Yeah. So it gets
Thank
really
you
fun
for
actually.
the reminder. Yeah, that's right. Thank you for the reminder and
Yeah.
clarity, because we do work with several other centers in the body, some of which, like for me, it was surprising that, yeah, I've heard of mental, emotional, physical centers before in other systems, but never about like our natural shamanic center and our mystical spiritual center and working with that. So that was some of the most exciting uh, insights and new information and practices that I received too. Um,
If I could
so
give just one example. So this is not like sort of here's one of my favorite things to say: take what you're shown and make it your own. Right? I don't like systems that tell you have to do it this way. In fact, I've traveled a lot, so I've seen people practice like the things I share with them and say, "Oh, it made my swimming better, right? It made my Tai Chi better, right? It made my driving less stressful, right?" And just as an example, like if you're swimming, right? What if you're just swimming with your hands like this? It's different than if you swim from that center,
mm,
right? And then if you hook up that center, say to your elbow centers, right? To your hand centers, you see that? So it's a much smoother and actually more beautiful and efficient movement too. And so again, that's just another way that you can see how this unpacks. So we start very simple, and we keep it simple. However, we apply that simple principle, in this case, centering, to diverse situations. And so that simplicity can function in complexity without ever getting complicated or
That's right.
confusing. And that's the problem, again, with just learning this technique and that technique and this biohack and that biohack. And you just have kind of this Frankenstein of, of things, a pile of books, right? And you take that same pile of books, there's nothing wrong with it, but you organize them, let's say, using the principle of alphabetical order. See that? So then it's much better, much easier to sort of organize and choose what is actually relevant for the moment. Yeah.
Thank you, Sifu. I think that gave us a really good idea and feeling of what these practices can do for us. And so at this part of the call, I want to just invite everyone. First of all, thank you so much for sticking this far.
Yeah.
And now I just want to invite you all to just imagine, like, if you could stay centered and feel well, like you just did in the practice in every moment of your life, no matter what you're doing and no matter what's happening in our external world, how good would this feel? And when you feel good, imagine how much more of the things you love that you could create in your life because you have that energy and you're present. And I would like to invite you all, if you're ready, to upgrade your operating system, to take yoga and your church, your inner temple with you wherever you go. We currently have an extra special offer for you. Our signature program is actually a year-long journey, a membership with access to a year-long journey, which gives you access to 7 hours, actually over 7 hours of high-quality pre-recorded videos, I think Sifu mentioned earlier. And these videos already teach you all the 16 practices of walking, standing, sitting, and sleeping, which you can watch on your own time and watch as many times as you would like. And the one-year membership also includes coaching calls, group coaching calls twice a month to go deeper and practice together. And so you can ask your more specific questions like, am I training this correctly? Or I don't quite get this part. Could you explain more? You can ask these questions to Sifu Paul. And you get access to our online community where you can share your progress, your journey, and get inspired by other committed students, as well as sharing your expertise and your world and who you are as a cultivator online too. So currently, our program content is actually valued well over $40,000, believe it or not. But we're actually celebrating the grand opening of School for Seasonal Living this month. And so our current program tuition is only 15,000 USD. But this is only for a limited time. Once we actually fill the next 10 spots, the tuition will go up. So if our program interests you, the next step would actually be to book a call with me so that in the call we can confirm whether or not our program will really deeply help you and give you the support that you need to transform your specific challenges right now. So if you feel like this is something you're interested in, please reach out to us and come talk to us to make sure like this would be a good fit for you. So with that said, thank you so much. And let's go into some Q&A if there are questions. Let me check the chat here. Oh, thank you so much, Polani. I just read your message. It just, thank you for that testimonial. I love this. Polani said, I would love to input how powerful these practices are. My experience so far with the systematic approach that are being offered and shared by Dr. Paul and Rebecca have, at the simplest, allowed the expansion of time. In this expanded time, I am finding the ability to create greater peace, clarity of thought and feeling, and optimal use of energy. Those few minutes tonight were necessary. Thank you for incorporating this into tonight's open house. Oh, thank you, Fulani. That's so beautiful and generous of you. So are there...
What I can promise in my experience is that if you are willing to sort of receive what comes through this kind of transmission, and you're looking for something that is quality, of course I'm biased, but like I said, I've tested it out with many people from many different countries, and I'm just so grateful that it's been having profound effects um, for people's journey, whether it's about healing from like a breakup, which is can be um, yeah, I don't, which can be really, some people really even get suicidal in certain cases, and just and some people it's like other situations where their children have flew the nest, and they're kind of at a loss of identity, or some people who have retired and looking for a new. I would say a lot of people are in that transition state where they're no longer who they want to be. They've suffered enough, and they're not yet clear about their new who yet. And this is a very crucial time for transformation. A lot of people maybe just get stuck in that stage, but it's such a powerful alchemical moment. It's sort of like you're in the cocoon. Like, are you going to die in the cocoon, or are you going to become the butterfly, so to speak? Yeah. So, yeah. So I don't usually make guarantees, but in my experience, I can pretty confidently say if people do I call it the home play rather than homework, because we already have a lot of work. So, and I'm willing and able sort of to support people into their fuller actualization. And it's not just me. There's sort of a background to everything that I transmit that I don't have the time to go into in this context. So, um, so yeah, if this resonates, or if you have more questions in this moment, I'm happy to answer them, or you can follow up with Rebecca, hopefully in the near future.
Thank you so much. And I just want to add one last thing before we let everyone enjoy their evenings. It just, what you said reminded me, and I'll share more testimonials like on our Facebook group, which you can join if you haven't, or Instagram. But for me, another thing that this training, these practices has given me is that I no longer don't know what to do when I'm feeling stressed or lost. It's in those moments, I just return to these practices. And even if I don't have like a solution for my problem right away, I'm never in this mode of like, oh my God, like, what do I do anymore? I have this trust with the universe that I've been able to build thanks to these practices, because I know I can return to center. And then I know the divine downloads start to come after that point, to help me solve my problems or get a new idea I need to move forward. And at the very least, I've seen, like, for my sister, who I've taught these practices to, and my friends, it doesn't guarantee you're not going to feel pain anymore. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but as human beings in this body, we're going to feel pain like for the rest of our life. But the difference that these practices make is that you may feel pain temporarily, but you won't suffer for long anymore. That's what happened to me before. I used to be in this deep states of suffering or even depression for quite like weeks, months at a time, depending on what the trigger was. But after training these practices, even if I now dip into like a temporary state of depression or feeling a little lower in mood, I already trust myself, and then I come out of it much quicker. Like, it's only like turned into days and just hours, and then I'm out already. So I just wanted to share that. So again, thank you so much, everyone, for spending time with us. We so appreciate it. And if you have any questions at all, if you want to chat at any time, please don't hesitate to reach out. Let me put the contact info in the chat here. You can either email us at info@seasonalschool.com, or text me at my number here. Or you can just book a call straight away using the booking link here. So thank you. And
Yeah, appreciate it, really. Oh, hearts. So yeah, I was signing off. Yeah, for now.
bye-bye, everyone. Enjoy your evening.